Now, you know, I used this picture to represent my class, and you might not know anything about this picture. It's a picture of Jonah being thrown up out of a whale's belly after spending 3 days inside it. It's an old biblical story. It's a myth. It's a fairy tale. That's one way of looking at it, and I don't mean that in a derogative manner. We know, for example, that some of the Grimm brothers' fairy tales are perhaps 15,000 years old. They've been traced way back. They're really, really old. And old stories are strange, and they're strange because, well, they've been told generation after generation after generation. And so you could imagine that something retold over such an expansive time has been reduced to its gist many, many times. And nothing that's in the story anymore is superfluous. It's all meaningful in some sense. It's sort of like a meta story. That's one way of thinking about it. Imagine that you took 100 books, 100 adventure books, and you had to extract out the central features of an adventure book. Now, it's hard to do that. It's like you're averaging across them or something like that, distilling them in some manner. Then you'd get a meta adventure, and it would be like a myth upon which all adventures are based. And this story is actually one of those stories. And I'm going to tell you what I think the story means. And I'm not saying that this is all it means, because most stories of this sort are in some sense inexhaustible. Just like great works of art are inexhaustible. There's more information in them than you can possibly articulate. That's what makes them profound. That's why you go look at them, because otherwise someone could just tell you about the painting and that would be the end of that, but that doesn't work. So Jonah is being spit up by this whale, and of course on the face of it that's an impossibility, because, well, you can't live inside a whale. That's why it's impossible. Now you may remember, and likely do, that you all know a story about someone who is inside a whale. That's Pinocchio, right? And you know, you go to that movie, maybe even as an adult, you watch that movie, and Geppetto's down there in the whale, in his little boat, you know, it's big cavernous inside. You don't really care that there's a bunch of things you don't care about. You don't care that those are drawings and not real people. You don't care about that. And you don't care that the inside of a whale isn't a cavern. And you don't care that Pinocchio's a puppet, for that matter. None of that matters to you at all, and that's because you're really strange creatures. And you don't even notice when you're doing something absolutely absurd, and that's one of those times when you are. But if someone taps you on the shoulder and says, you know, you're just watching drawings of a puppet. Puppets can't really move autonomously, and now he's at the bottom of the ocean. You have no idea why. He's going to rescue his father, and you're just sitting there and you're okay with that. And you'll say, shut up, because I want to finish watching the movie. And so that's interesting, you see. That tells you something about your unconscious, if you're psychoanalytically minded, because you're doing something that you cannot account for. Now you might say, well, it's enjoyable. Well, that's deep, man. You're really going a long ways with that. The question is, A, why is it comprehensible? B, why is it enjoyable? C, just exactly what are you doing there? And you think that whatever you are doing there is so valuable that you'll actually pay to do it. Weird. Very, very weird. And you know, when you read about, let's say, the archaic rituals of tribal people, and you ask yourself, just what are they up to? You might think, well, they're up to the same thing that you're up to when you go see a movie. So, and then you might also notice that the most expensive artifacts, or among the most expensive artifacts that human beings create, are movies. They spend hundreds of millions of dollars on them. And we consider that a good deal. And you know, it drives our technology too, because the high-tech movies, like the Marvel movies that require so much computer animation, they actually drive the demand for high-end graphics chips. So our technological advance forward is actually motivated in part by our desire to represent things fictionally in ever more spectacular manner. So Jonah, well, let me tell you the story of Jonah, and I'll tell you why I'm going to tell you it. This is from Camille Paglia, who's a critic of the modern university and a very brilliant woman, I would say, very controversial, incredibly rapid speaker, and she can think so fast, it's just unbelievable. She's really fun to watch if you like that sort of thing. Vicious adversary in an argument. She says the number one problem in academia today is not ignorant students, but ignorant professors who have substituted narrow expertise and theoretical sophistication, a preposterous term for breadth and depth of learning in the world history of art and thought. Art is a vast, interconnected web work, a fabricated tradition, and over-concentration on any one point is a distortion. Here's the problem. I wrestled with this when I was trying to understand some of the things that I'm going to teach you about. There's some things that you kind of have to grasp as a whole. You know, sometimes you have a flash of insight and a bunch of things that you didn't know were related fall together. That's supposed to happen in psychotherapy when you link different disparate patterns of behavior together because you've linked them, say, with a single cause, and you get this like excited feeling of illumination and possibility. And there are forms of communication that require the simultaneous realization of a multitude of disparate phenomena. Like a movie can be like that, you know, you listen to a movie, you watch a movie, and then you don't know what the hell's going on, and then something happens near the end and bang, everything clicks together. And it's because you've sort of seen the thing as a whole. And a lot of the things that a lot of the ways that we interact with the world that are mysterious are like that. And this is what Paglia is referring to, is that, and this is a psychoanalytic proposition, I would say, or a romantic proposition. The idea roughly is that way out in the periphery of reality are all those things that not only do you not know, but you don't even know you don't know, right? You're completely blind to their existence. And then there's unknown things that you have some suspicions about, and then there's unknown things that you can start to imagine and act out and dramatize. And so all of that is on the periphery of our knowledge. That's a psychoanalytic dictum. Where do thoughts come from? Well, partly they're nested in dreams. Dreams are the birthplace of thoughts. Fantasy, it's not that surprising. Fantasy is the birthplace of ideas. You know, if you're thinking about what you're going to do in the future, you enter into a reverie, a dream state, and you contemplate multiple possibilities, and then you start thinking them through. Use your imagination to search beyond where you are. And the collective human attempt to do that is our mysterious, humanistic, artistic tradition, which is very difficult to justify from a formal, articulate point of view. What good is dance? Like, what is it that you're doing when you're dancing? Well, you don't care because you like to dance. Why? Well, you don't know, but you do. It's built into you. Music. Music's a human universal. Cultures use music to organize themselves, right? They use music to catalyze their identities. They use music to unite around. You know, in more archaic societies, less differentiated societies, let's say, you know, a mask that represents part of the family tradition will have a particular design, and there'll be a particular song written for it, and there'll be a particular dance about it. And the song and the dance are something like the symbolic representation of a mode of being in the world. Like maybe the mask is a wolf mask, and so you act out the wolf, and there's music that goes along with that. And you think, well, what are you doing when you're acting out the wolf? And part of that is, well, you're trying to understand wolves. You know, it's imitation in part, and you know, if you live in the natural world, and if you hunt and if you're preyed upon, then understanding the things that you're hunting and preying upon is useful, and there's also perhaps useful things to learn from them. And so we play this strange symbolic game with the world, like children pretending. That's another way of thinking about it. And we do that to act out and to begin to understand things we don't understand, like how to act.